Morning, students. Today we are going to discuss one topic related to pulmonary ventilation. That is very important topic, dead space volume. We have seen the lung volumes and capacities, and in that we were having a passing reference of this dead space volume, which is very much important and it contributes to the pulmonary ventilation also. So first we are going to see the pulmonary ventilation actual and then how the dead space volume is going to change the ventilated air that we are going to see. As now all of you are aware that ventilation is a dynamic process that moves air in and out of the lungs. And the minute ventilation we have discussed in the last session that it is the volume of air that enters the lungs each minute. So per minute ventilation is minute ventilation and it is the product of tidal volume and respiratory rate. This is also called as minute respiratory volume. That is the ability of our respiratory system to have the air for the ventilation. So we have done this calculation also that if your tidal volume is 500 ml and the respiratory rate is 12 per minute, the minute ventilation will be around 6 liters per minute. Now, normally this minute ventilation, the range is around 5 liters to 10 liters per minute as the respiratory rate most of the time is varying from 10 to 20 per minute. So it depends on both the tidal volume also and the respiratory rate also. However, the tidal volume generally is varying with the age. It is having a difference with gender also, the body composition, the metabolic activity also. It can be changed. It is normally seen that the tidal volume is 3 to 5 ml per kg of body weight in children and the respiratory rate is also high in children. So these physiological variations you have to keep in mind if you are calculating the minute ventilation. And these will be the uh, factors which are going to affect your normal minute ventilation also, the physiological factors. We can also see expired minute ventilation, that is per minute ventilation which is expired. And at rest, it will be actually same as minute ventilation. So if the person is at rest, the expired amount of air per minute will be same as minute ventilation. But as we have already discussed that inspiration most of the time is with the efforts with the respiratory system itself, with the muscle itself will be possible with efforts. But as the expiration is half of the expiration can be with effort, but remaining most part of the expiration is effortless. So we have to depend on the airways, and that is why we always are considered in studying more detail the expiration. Now we have discussed also the alveolar ventilation because the pulmonary ventilation may be 6 liters, but the volume of air which is actually reaching the alveoli per minute, which is known as alveolar ventilation, is somewhat less. The goal of pulmonary ventilation is to have continuous renovation of air in the gas exchange area, which is alveoli. So where these alveoli, if you remember the functional anatomy session, that these alveoli are very close to the pulmonary blood vessels. So actually here the gas exchange is taking place. And the ultimate objective of this ventilation is that you have to give the ventilation up to the level of alveoli. And to know the volume of air that takes part in alveolar ventilation, you have to deduct the dead space volume from the tidal volume, and then the volume is multiplied by breathing frequency. So that will be actual alveolar ventilation. So what is dead space? Dead space is defined as the space or the volume within the airways that do not allow the gas exchange with the pulmonary capillary blood to occur due to their particular functional anatomical arrangement. The tidal volume air which occupies the respiratory tract that consists of this conducting and the respiratory airways. But the fraction of tidal volume that occupies only the conducting airways does not take part in the gas exchange. And if you calculate this amount of air, it is around 150 milliliters, which is remaining in the conducting areas. This 150 ml of air is not used in gas exchange, and this volume of wasted air is known as dead space volume. So it is very much important. So this is the space within the airways where gas exchange with the pulmonary capillary blood will not occur. Since the dead space is due to the structural arrangement of the airways, this is often known as anatomical dead space. So this particular, due to the functional structural arrangement of the airways, you are going to waste this 150 ml of volume. Then it is known as anatomical dead space. So due to the anatomical dead space, out of 500 milliliters of tidal inspiration, only 350 ml of air is entering the alveoli. The ratio of dead space volume to the tidal volume in the normal healthy adult is around 25 to 30%. So normally 30% of the minute ventilation does not participate in the gas exchange. So you always have to remember, because this is, if someone is having normal healthy ventilation, then it's fine. We can deduct this amount. But if it is having a difficulty in breathing, if the disease process is there, and in addition, due to the functional arrangement, we are wasting this much amount of air which is coming inside for gas diffusion, then we have to think of this volume also. So even if the person with a disease lung or any disease lung processes is taking up the ventilation, which is less, again in that 50% will not participate in the gas exchange. As a treating physician, you have to remember this. Now, there is a term which is also known as physiological dead space. So, some amount of inspired air in the alveoli does not participate in the gas exchange. This happens at some alveoli due to various reasons have little or no blood supply. Therefore, in these alveoli also become a part of the wasted air. And this volume of air in these alveoli is referred to as alveolar dead space, which is also known as physiological dead space. So see, what we have is anatomically you have 150 milliliters of wasted air, which is anatomical dead space. But sometimes some alveoli they will not have any blood supply or very little blood supply. So even if these are getting the air, they will not participate in the gas exchange. And if this is the part, then if this particular part of air is known as physiological dead space or alveolar dead space. Generally, the physiological dead space is equal to anatomical dead space plus the alveolar dead space. So alveolar dead space is very negligible in normal individuals. So it will be seen only in cases of some disease process, some any of the affection of the lung or the thoracic system or the alveolar disease. So then only it will be in great amount. Otherwise, it is very less in the normal healthy individuals. So due to this particular reason, in the normal healthy individuals, the anatomical dead space is almost equal to the physiological dead space. But in many lung disorders, this alveolar dead space volume also becomes high. And then the physiological dead space is more than the anatomical dead space. So it adds up in the wasting of air. Now, how we can measure this dead space? There are depending, generally three methods are there. One is we can use the Radford's formula, we can use the single breath CO2 mechanism and single breath nitrogen techniques. Now, these again are the various methods by which you can determine the dead space volume, and this will be homework for you that how to perform these procedures. So you find out the procedure part of these three techniques. And again, I leave some roll numbers here because many a times only some of the students are constantly answering the question. Roll number 11, roll number 93, and roll number 179. So these will be the three roll numbers. Each of you has to have one of these methods. So you find out how these methods are done for the measurement of dead space. The procedure will be these three techniques and give it to me. So this is how the record is taken by this. So if you are plotting a graph by any of these methods, on horizontal axis you have the volume of expired air, and by the nitrogen content, this is the graph which is taken by single phase nitrogen technique. On the vertical axis you have the nitrogen content. Now you can see in the first part of expiration, only the nitrogen will be expired. So this much amount, if you can calculate the amount of nitrogen, then it will be the dead space air which can be found out by this particular procedure. And remaining will be the alveolar air which is actually have taken part in the respiration process. Now, what is the significance of this? The first is clinically why it is important. The alveolar ventilation, as we know, that it represents the amount of air which is reaching the alveoli. So this is the air that is important, which takes part in the gas exchange. So even in the absence of lung disease, if anatomic dead space volume is increased due to any cause, the alveolar ventilation will be decreased because that much amount of air will be wasted. So for example, a patient on mechanical ventilator, the alveolar ventilation decreases due to the increased dead space volume. Why we are increasing the dead space volume? Because a tube is inserted whenever the mechanical ventilator is attached. The mechanical ventilator procedure has been very nicely given by Aman. So you can go through again. So what we have is a non-invasive technique and an invasive technique. In the invasive technique, what you are doing, you are inserting a tube. If it is a tube, that will add up in the dead space volume. So you have first conducting pathway and along with that the tube also. So that increases the dead space volume. So in such patients, the minute ventilation remains constant, but the alveolar gas exchange will be suffered because the air which is reaching to the alveoli will be less. The physiological significance is that in rapid and shallow breathing, suppose physiologically many a times you happen to have this type of breathing pattern. Though the minute ventilation does not change, but the alveolar ventilation is grossly impaired because most of the air inhaled by these type of breathing is utilized to occupy the anatomic dead space. So if we are doing the rapid and shallow breathing, most of the air will be wasted in anatomical dead space. So patients with rapid and shallow breathing develop generally, if you follow these or if you observe in the words, hypoxia and hypercapnia. In contrast, a subject with deep and slow breathing will have adequate alveolar ventilation, though the minute ventilation does not change much. Such subjects have alveolar ventilation even greater than the subject with normal breathing. So that is why the respiratory exercises, the breathing exercises, these are given to many of the patients also, many of the normal individuals also, and to maintain the cardiopulmonary reserve also, it is advised to have this type of breathing pattern so that whatever amount of ventilation we are getting, it will actually reach to the alveoli for gas exchange. Thus, it helps to improve the alveolar ventilation, and it is important to increase the depth of frequency than to increase the frequency. In fact, during the moderate to severe exercise, just I was discussing in a trained athlete to achieve the target alveolar ventilation, it is by mainly increasing the depth rather than the frequency of breathing. So again, if you observe the physical patterns of whatever sports you are following, like football, cricket, tennis, athletes, you can see the training schedule of this, and they have these breathing exercise and they are mainly focused on increasing the depth rather than frequency of breathing so that they will achieve the target alveolar ventilation. That's why I was telling pranayam. Most of the yogic breathing exercise, like pranayam, which is having a controlled breathing pattern, emphasis is given to practice slow and deep breathing. They will ask you to concentrate on your breathing pattern slowly. So that is the thing which you have. In most of the times, if you are anxious, most of the time it must have been told by your parents or your teachers or your colleagues that you just close your eyes and just for a fraction of seconds, you count numbers. Why this counting of numbers? Because we can slow down the breathing pattern, and that will aim at increasing the alveolar ventilation in addition to imbibing the energy, and which is consciously inspired. So this is the training which is given. Now there are some clinical abnormalities of ventilation. We can have hypoventilation, which is seen in depression of respiratory centers by diseases of or drugs. So generally depression of the centers which are present in the CNS and the drugs which are acting on the CNS respiratory center, that type of ventilation, if it is decreased, then it is known as central hypoventilation. Or if there is a ventilatory apparatus failure, then it is known as peripheral hypoventilation. Maybe it is of any type. This will lead to decrease in the partial pressure of oxygen and increase in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. This hypoventilation generally occurs in whenever there is exacerbation of chronic lung disease, such as asthma, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema. Then you may have depression of the respiratory centers in head injuries or by drugs such as barbiturates and opiates, or in cases of neuromuscular disorders which weakens the respiratory muscles like myasthenia gravis, poliomyelitis, acute polyneuropathy, and tetanus. So these are the clinical conditions where you can get the alveolar hypoventilation. The hypoxia, which is occurring in hypoventilation, it is occurring due to decreased oxygen supply, and the hypercapnia, which is generally seen, is due to decreased carbon dioxide removal. So these are the reasons why there is hypoxia and hypercapnia. Of course, you have to treat this particular condition emergency. Then we can have hyperventilation. This usually occurs due to stimulation of respiratory centers. Voluntary hyperventilation and exercise-induced hyperventilation are very common physiological causes. And here, the excess removal of carbon dioxide in hyperventilation will be resulting in respiratory alkalosis. So many a times in cases of exercise, or you can do voluntary hyperventilation also. But this can lead to respiratory alkalosis. Again, this condition, if it is reaching to alkalosis, we have to treat it in emergency basis. So thank you very much for listening carefully to this particular session. Again, I will remind you the 3 homeworks for these 3 students. As far as possible, within 2 or 3 days, you give the answers for that. In the next session, I will be discussing, that is on the 3rd June, I will be discussing the pulmonary circulation, and I will have a separate session on ventilation perfusion ratio. Thank you very much.